On the 1st of February 1917, the German government announced that they would carry out unrestricted submarine warfare. In effect, any ship heading towards Britain could be sunk without warning. The effect was disastrous for Britain. In the month of March, 500,000 tons of shipping had been sunk, 25% of the total. The losses were so great that Britain would be forced to surrender in months if the situation did not improve. The governments in Britain and the USA introduced emergency measures to protect their ships. The British government told the Royal Navy to escort merchant ships in convoys. Unfortunately, the Navy did not see itself as nursemaid to mere merchantmen. They wanted to be out confronting the enemy fleet. After putting pressure on the head of the Admiralty, the government got their convoys, fully in operation by September. They also gave the go-ahead to proposals to camouflage ships, and a special unit was set up for the purpose. The US government also supported proposals for the camouflage of their ships, and the US Navy set up a camouflage department. These units took on board several proposals for camouflage and carried out tests on models to try them out. These tests were quite elaborate, simulating sea, sky, lighting, periscopes, and weather effects. As the threat was from submarines, which would stay submerged to avoid detection, the camouflage would be designed from their point of view, looking through a periscope at sea level. Submarines of the period were very slow underwater, having to lie in wait for a ship to go past. They even had to limit the use of their periscope to a few seconds at a time, in case it was spotted. Also, the torpedoes were unguided, so they had to aim accurately before firing. The crew would estimate the ship's range, bearing and speed, plot its course, and calculate when to fire. If the calculations were wrong, they were likely to miss. All of this worked to the advantage of those trying to protect the ships with camouflage. An early proposal by William Mackay was to use background blending, making the ship merge into the sky. He devised a scheme using various patches, each with a different mottled pattern. These were meant to break up the ship's outline and blend in with the sky. USS Orlean was the first ship to be painted in this scheme. It soon became apparent that the constantly changing sky and varying direction of light made blending in impractical. The scheme rarely worked. In the UK, the marine artist and Royal Navy Volunteer Reserve Officer, Norman Wilkinson, devised a disruptive scheme, not to blend in, but to cause confusion. The idea was that if the submarine could not work out the ship's course, they would not be able to aim the torpedo accurately, making it likely to miss. After testing a variety of designs, disruptive schemes were adopted, and Wilkinson was put in charge of the mass painting of merchant ships. Marine artists were recruited to supervise the work, including Cecil King, deputy to Wilkinson, and Edward Wadsworth, supervising painting at Liverpool and then at Bristol. So how does disruptive camouflage work? You can see it, but can you work out what you are looking at? In the case of these merchant ships, can you plot their course? Let's have a go. Here's a ship as seen through a periscope. Can you work out its bearing? If you are looking at 0 degrees, what is the ship's heading? You only have around 10 seconds to work it out. Now let's see how you did. Around 120 degrees. If you were within 10 degrees, you have a good chance of a successful attack. Let's have another go. Here's another view, only 10 seconds. This time it's around 250 degrees. How did you do? The designers of these camouflage schemes realised that it would help if every ship was different, so the submarines could not get used to a particular design. However, the sheer number of ships meant that devising individual patterns for each ship was too complicated, and some designs were reused. In the USA, various schemes were devised. However, in January 1918, the US Navy Department announced that all ships would be camouflaged in British-style dazzle. The new camouflage section set up its own research division and soon produced new designs of their own. They didn't like the name dazzle as they felt there were a variety of techniques in use, but the name stuck. In 1918, the US camouflage section started cutting up wooden blocks, arranging them and using them as a template for pseudo 3D designs. So how effective is this? Let's see. This one is at 70 degrees. It is impossible to say how effective dazzle was. It was introduced at the same time as convoys, and steering a zigzag course was introduced shortly after. You can't untangle the effect of these different measures. Not only that, but the effectiveness of camouflage would be affected by the weather and sea conditions, different in each case. What we can say is that these combined measures greatly reduced the loss of shipping. In April 1917, 881,027 tons of shipping were sunk. In April 1918, it was 278,719 tons. In addition, the use of convoys led to a greater loss of submarines, from around 20 to over 60 per year. In 1919, Leo S. Blodgett carried out research on the effectiveness of dazzle camouflage, with an elaborate setup using model ships, lighting, simulated atmospheric effects, and lenses to mimic a periscope. His tests showed that people would typically get the heading of a dazzle-painted ship wrong by an average of 20 to 30 degrees, easily enough to cause a torpedo to miss. Various navies used disruptive camouflage during the First World War. Many of the people involved continued the research through into the Second World War. However, by the end of that war, the increased threat from aircraft, faster submarines, and then the development of guided missiles led to a change of emphasis. The threat was no longer a submarine lying in wait. For a brief period, war seemed to be imitating art, until technology moved on.